The billionaire's rival never expected his world to shake because of a maid's daughter. Marcus Hale, a powerful CEO known for crushing his competitors, ruled every boardroom with confidence, until she walked into his life. Ava Miller wasn't part of his empire. She scrubbed its flaws. But when her heart-touching act of kindness stopped a disaster that could have ruined Marcus's public image, everyone froze. Whispers spread fast. Why would a billionaire's rival even look twice at a maid's daughter? What started as gratitude turned into something deeper, something Marcus couldn't explain. But behind Ava's quiet eyes lay a truth powerful enough to destroy both men. One secret that would change everything before the world even knew her name. Marcus Hale's life moved like a clock, precise, cold, and always on schedule. The billionaire CEO of a leading tech empire, he lived high above New York City, surrounded by glass walls, silver furniture, and silence. People bowed when he entered a room. Deals closed when he spoke. Yet every night, when the city lights faded into the distance, Marcus sat alone with nothing but numbers to keep him company, a few miles away. In a small apartment in Queens, Ava Miller wiped dust from her violin and tied her mother's work apron. The two shared a narrow bed, peeling wallpaper, and a dream that someday life might be kind. Her mother, Nora, had worked for Marcus for over a decade, cleaning marble floors she could never afford to step on in shoes of her own. Nora never complained, but her tired smile couldn't hide her weakness anymore. Her cough had grown deeper, and at night, Ava would sit by her side counting every breath like it might stop at any moment. Doctors said she needed surgery soon. The cost was unthinkable. Still, Nora refused help. "We earn our bread, Ava. We don't beg for crumbs," she'd whisper, her voice trembling but proud. Every evening, after classes at a small community college, Ava walked into Marcus Hale's mansion as part of the cleaning staff. She moved quietly, polishing tables that cost more than her entire apartment. Marcus rarely noticed her, or anyone really. To him, people were background noise in his world of power. But that changed one morning. At a charity breakfast hosted for the city's wealthiest, a waiter tripped and shattered a glass tower centerpiece. A power surge followed, cutting off sound to the event's microphone. Guests gasped as Marcus stood frozen mid-speech. Then a soft voice rose from the back. Ava stepped forward, crouched near the podium, and reconnected a loose wire using a hairpin. The mic crackled back to life. The crowd clapped. Marcus turned, meeting her eyes for the first time. Something in her calmness, that unshaken grace, held him still. Later that evening, he asked his manager about her. The maid's daughter was all he was told, a minor name on a long payroll list. But curiosity caught hold of him, like a whisper he couldn't silence. Days later, he found her again, playing violin alone in a service corridor during her break. The music floated through the air, emotional, heart-touching, and strangely familiar. Marcus froze. It was the same tune his late sister used to play when he was a child. He stood listening, remembering a life before money, before walls. When she noticed him, Ava stopped abruptly. "I'm sorry, sir. I didn't know you were there." "You shouldn't stop," Marcus said softly. That was beautiful," she smiled shyly. "It's just something I play to keep the noise away." The next day, he anonymously arranged a small scholarship for her through his foundation. But Ava declined. Instead, she sent a handwritten note. "Sir, please use that money to raise wages for the cleaning staff. They need it more than I do." Marcus stared at the letter for minutes, something stirring deep inside him. No one ever refused him. No one ever gave him reason to look beyond himself. Meanwhile, Ethan Cole, Marcus's longtime rival, another millionaire CEO and former business partner, noticed Marcus's distraction. He began digging. The mighty Hale falling for a maid's daughter? He whispered to his assistant with a smirk. This could get interesting. Nora sensed something was changing. Every time she saw Marcus speaking with Ava, her hands shook. She hid a small box deep in her closet, one that held a hospital bracelet and a letter she'd never let Ava read. That night, as Ava returned home, she noticed her mother sitting in the dark, tears in her eyes. "Mom, what's wrong?" she asked. Nora just said, "Some truths should never see daylight, Ava, promise me." "If someone asks about your father, say you don't know." Ava frowned, confused. "But I don't, Mom. You never told me." Nora turned away, whispering so faintly that Ava barely heard her. "And I pray you never do." The city outside roared with sirens, and somewhere in his penthouse, Marcus stared out over the skyline, replaying that violin tune in his head. He didn't know why, but something about Ava's melody felt like a memory he wasn't supposed to remember. And as midnight passed, a black car parked outside the Miller apartment, Ethan Cole's driver behind the wheel. A man stepped out, holding an envelope marked "Confidential Hale Industries." The next morning, when Ava opened the door, the envelope lay on the floor. Her hands trembled as she read the first line, "The truth about your past belongs to us now." She froze, unaware that from this moment forward, her life and the billionaires would never be the same again. A storm rolled through New York that week, thunder outside, tension inside. Marcus Hale's company was preparing for a massive product launch, and every minute mattered. He should have been focused on investors, charts, and numbers. Instead, he couldn't stop thinking about Ava Miller, the maid's daughter whose eyes carried both fire and sadness. Late one evening, during a high-profile corporate gala at the Hale Tower, the city's power grid flickered. The lights dimmed, and the entire ballroom fell into darkness. A murmur rippled through the crowd. "What's happening?" whispered one of the guests. Panic crept in. The emergency systems failed to respond, and the CEO panicked. In the corner, Ava, working quietly as part of the maintenance crew, rushed toward the control room. Her hands moved fast, rerouting a circuit like she'd done it 100 times. Moments later, the lights came back on and applause erupted. Marcus stood frozen on the stage, watching her from across the room. Everyone else returned to their champagne and chatter, but he couldn't take his eyes off her. When the gala ended, he found her in the stairwell, packing her cleaning supplies. "You saved the night again," he said, his voice softer than usual. "It was nothing," she replied. "I just don't like seeing people scared." Something about that answer struck him, the sincerity, the quiet strength. "Most people would have run," he said. She smiled faintly. "I've spent my whole life fixing things no one notices." That night Marcus stayed awake, thinking about those words. For the first time in years, the billionaire CEO felt small, like the wealth he built meant nothing beside the courage of a girl who owned almost nothing. Days later, Marcus invited Ava to visit the Hale Foundation Museum, where they kept a collection of vintage instruments for charity programs. She hesitated, but her mother insisted she go. "You deserve something beautiful for once," Nora told her. At the museum, Marcus handed Ava a violin once played by a world-renowned musician. "Try it," he said. She shook her head. "No, sir." "This isn't mine," Marcus frowned. "Why not?" "Because some things are meant to stay in their place," she whispered. Then she lifted her own scratched violin and played instead. The sound filled the room, emotional, raw, tear-jerking. It was the same melody Marcus's sister had played before she passed away. His heart clenched as memories flooded back. The hospital, the promise he never kept, the guilt that built his empire. When the final note faded, Marcus couldn't speak. He simply said, "You have a gift the world shouldn't ignore." Ava smiled politely, unaware of the storm she had just awakened inside him. Later that night, Nora was cleaning the top floor when her chest tightened. She collapsed, clutching her heart. "Mom!" Ava screamed, rushing to her side. The mansion erupted into chaos as staff called for help. Marcus appeared in the hallway, disbelief in his eyes. "Get an ambulance!" he shouted. He knelt beside Nora as paramedics arrived, his mind spinning. As they lifted Nora onto the stretcher, something slipped from her hand, a folded letter with Marcus's company logo on it. Ava picked it up, confused. The paramedics rushed Nora away, sirens fading into the distance. Ava unfolded the letter just enough to see one sentence written in bold, "Confidential, regarding patient Ava Miller." Her stomach dropped. She looked up at Marcus, who stood frozen, speechless. Neither of them knew that this piece of paper, this one secret, would unravel everything they thought they knew about each other. The night after Nora's collapse, Marcus waited outside the hospital, pacing under the cold glow of the emergency sign. He couldn't explain why he cared so much. She was his employee, nothing more. But something about Ava's tear-streaked face tore through the walls he'd built over years of wealth and pride. When the doctor finally spoke, the words hit like stones. "We need immediate surgery, but she's uninsured for a procedure of this cost." Ava froze, clutching her mother's hand. Marcus stepped forward, ready to pay, but Nora's weak voice cut through the air. "No, not your money. I won't owe the rich another favor." Her words stung. Marcus nodded silently, respect and frustration mixing inside him. He left his card on the bedside table and walked out, the guilt of his sister's death clawing at him again. That same night, Ethan Cole, Marcus's ruthless rival, visited his penthouse under the pretense of a business meeting. He noticed a hospital invoice on Marcus's desk, Nora Miller's name printed clearly. "Interesting," Ethan said, smirking. "You're funding heart surgeries for Maids now." Marcus shot him a warning look. "She's loyal. That's all." But Ethan wasn't convinced. "You've changed, Marcus. And I think I know why." He leaned closer. "That girl, Ava, she looks familiar. You should really find out who her father is before your reputation burns." The words hung in the air like poison. The next morning, Marcus received a thick envelope at his office. Inside were copies of old documents, hospital records from 23 years ago, stamped with both Hale Industries and Coltech logos. One of the forms listed a premature baby, Ava Miller. No father's name, but the billing line read, "Paid by Hale Memorial Fund." Marcus's pulse quickened. That was the charity account he'd set up after his sister's death, the one meant to help children like her. Why was Ava connected to it? He called Nora's hospital room, but the nurse said she'd been moved unexpectedly that morning. No forwarding details, no records, nothing. Meanwhile, Ava arrived home to find the door slightly open. On the table lay a photo of her mother, years younger, standing beside two men, Marcus Hale and Ethan Cole, at a company launch. In the corner of the photo, a single word was scribbled in ink: truth. Her heart raced as headlights flashed through the window. A black car idled outside, the same one she'd seen before. Someone was watching her, and for the first time, Ava realized she wasn't just part of Marcus's story. She was the secret both billionaires were trying to hide. Rain poured down over Manhattan the night of the Hale Foundation charity concert, the event that was supposed to crown Marcus Hale's career and silence his rival forever. The ballroom glittered with power and prestige. Billionaires, investors, and media icons filled every seat. But behind the velvet curtains, tension burned like fire. Ava stood near the stage, clutching her violin. The invitation had arrived hours earlier, a surprise slot to perform as a tribute to her mother, who was still recovering in the hospital. It felt too sudden, too arranged. Yet she couldn't refuse. This was her mother's dream. Marcus entered the backstage hallway, his jaw tight. He hadn't slept in days. In his pocket was the photo Ava had found, proof that Ethan Cole had been hiding something for years. He had confronted Ethan that morning, demanding answers. Ethan only smiled. "Play your charity act tonight, Marcus. Let's see who walks away clean when the truth hits that stage." As Ava tuned her violin, Ethan approached her with a chilling calm. "You play beautifully," he said. "Your mother must be proud," Ava frowned. "You know my mother?" "Oh, quite well," he replied. "She worked for me before she ran away. I tried to help her, until she decided her daughter should grow up believing a lie." Her breath caught. "What are you talking about?" He smirked, holding up a folder. "Your birth records. Marcus doesn't know yet, but when I reveal this on stage, he'll wish he never met you." Before she could respond, the announcer's voice echoed, "Please welcome Miss Ava Miller." The lights flared as she stepped forward. The first notes of her violin trembled through the hall, soft, emotional, heartbreaking. The audience fell silent, moved by the purity of her music. Marcus watched from the front row, his eyes locked on her, unaware of Ethan's hand hovering over the microphone control beside the podium. Then, just as Ava's final note faded, Ethan pressed a button. The giant screen behind her flickered to life, displaying scanned documents, Ava Miller, patient 172, and the Hale Industries fund stamp. Gasps filled the hall. Marcus stood abruptly. "Stop this!" Ethan's voice thundered through the speakers. "Here's the truth, everyone. The billionaire's rival didn't just fall for his maid's daughter. He's been protecting the child of his own corporate past." The crowd erupted. Reporters surged forward. Ava froze, the violin slipping from her hands, and as chaos spread across the hall, one question echoed in every corner. Who was Ava Miller, really? The hall was chaos. Voices clashed, reporters shouted, and the sound of flashing bulbs filled the air. Ava stood frozen under the harsh lights, trembling as the world around her crumbled. Marcus pushed through the crowd, his voice rising above the noise. "Enough!" Ethan smirked from the podium. "Tell them, Marcus. Tell them who she really is. Tell them why your billion-dollar empire was built on lies." Marcus's fists clenched, anger and disbelief warring inside him. "You're twisting the truth, Ethan. You always have." "Oh?" Ethan's grin widened. "Then explain why your company's charity fund paid for her birth. Explain why her mother disappeared right after you fired her." A hush fell over the audience. Ava turned toward Marcus, her eyes wide and wet. "Is it true?" she whispered. "Did you know?" Marcus shook his head. "No, Ava, I swear I didn't know until today." His voice cracked. "That fund, it was named after my sister. It was meant to save lives, not destroy them." Ethan laughed bitterly. "Touching. But no one here believes in fairy tales." Before security could react, Marcus grabbed the microphone. His voice steadied, emotional, powerful, heart-touching. "Everyone here chases power, but tonight I've seen more courage from a maid's daughter than from any of us. Ava's music doesn't just move people, it heals them. It healed me." The crowd fell silent. Ava's tears slipped down her face as Marcus continued, voice breaking. "I built this empire to control fate, to stop pain, to feel less human. But she reminded me that kindness, not wealth, is what makes us powerful." Gasps echoed through the hall. Investors who moments ago whispered now listened in stunned quiet. Ethan's smirk faltered. "You think a speech saves you?" Marcus turned to him, eyes cold. "No, Ethan, the truth does." He held up a printed file. "You paid the hospital to alter records. You wanted to use Nora to blackmail me. But it wasn't my child. It was a girl saved by my sister's memorial fund, and you tried to erase that for profit." Ethan lunged, but guards pulled him back. The crowd erupted again, this time in disbelief at Ethan's downfall. Ava covered her face, sobbing, not from shame but release. Marcus looked at her, whispering so only she could hear, "You were never my mistake. Ava, you're my redemption." As security escorted Ethan out, a faint cheer rose from the back. The orchestra members had started playing softly again, Ava's melody echoing through the hall, and just as she lifted her violin once more, a nurse rushed in, breathless. "It's your mother," she said urgently. "She's awake and asking for you." The violin slipped in Ava's hands again, this time from shock, not fear. She looked at Marcus, heart pounding. The truth had broken them apart, but now it might be the very thing that brought them back together. The following morning, the city woke to headlines that rippled through every newsstand and television. Ethan Cole exposed, corporate lies unveiled at Hale Foundation Gala. For once, Marcus Hale's name wasn't paired with scandal, it was tied to something new, kindness. His bold confession the night before had turned a business war into a lesson in humanity. But Marcus didn't care about the news or the market. He was already on his way to the hospital. When he entered Nora's room, sunlight streamed across her bed. Her face was pale, but her eyes were open, soft, tired, but alive. Ava sat beside her, holding her hand, whispering something that made her mother smile for the first time in days. Nora looked up at Marcus. "You didn't have to come," she said weakly. "I did," he replied, "because I owe you more than I can ever repay." Nora sighed, a fragile breath escaping her chest. "You don't owe me, Mr. Hale. You already saved my daughter once, years ago, when that charity paid her hospital bill. I just didn't want her to grow up being someone's secret." Tears glistened in Ava's eyes. "You knew, didn't you, that the fund came from him?" Her mother nodded faintly. "I knew. But I also knew this world would try to turn kindness into debt. I couldn't let that happen." Marcus took her hand gently. "Then let me do it right this time. The Hale Memorial Fund will now cover full health care for all our staff and their families. You'll be the first name on that list." Nora closed her eyes and smiled. "That's the man your sister would have wanted you to be." Ava turned toward him, her voice trembling. "Thank you. Not for the money, but for seeing us." He shook his head. "No, Ava, you saw me first." Outside, spring had just begun. Cherry blossoms painted the hospital courtyard, a soft pink hue spreading across the city like hope rediscovered. Marcus watched as Ava walked toward her mother's wheelchair, her violin case swinging by her side. Weeks passed. Ethan Cole faced public disgrace and legal action for fraud and extortion. Marcus refused to celebrate. "Some victories," he said, "are too painful to enjoy." Months later, the Hale Foundation launched a new initiative, Hearts of Hope, dedicated to funding young musicians from struggling families. Its very first performance took place in a small Brooklyn community hall. Ava stood center stage, violin in hand, with Marcus in the audience beside Nora, both smiling proudly. When the last note faded, the crowd rose in a quiet standing ovation, not for wealth, not for fame, but for redemption. After the concert, Marcus joined them on stage and handed Ava a small framed photograph. It was his sister holding a violin just like hers. On the back, a single line was written, "Kindness outlives power." Ava held the frame close to her heart. Nora wiped her tears and whispered, "Your sister's melody lives through my daughter." Marcus smiled, his voice barely above a whisper. "And maybe through her I finally found peace." As the night ended, the three of them stood under the soft glow of city lights, a billionaire, a maid and her daughter, bound not by secrets or status, but by something far greater, compassion. And though the world would always remember the scandal between the billionaire's rival and the maid's daughter, what truly remained was the legacy of love, forgiveness, and a kindness powerful enough to rebuild broken hearts.